What's up, players? Welcome to Sims Tennis. We've got another racket review for you. This review was a fun one because this pure Aero 98 was an absolute rocket launcher. It basically felt like I was using Thor's hammer, but we'll get back into that later. Before we move on, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Alright, so as you'll see here, the pure Aero 98 paint job now matches the rest of the Aero line. The specs of the racket remain very similar to the last version. The string pattern is still the same 16 by 20 pattern. The weight and balance remain the same as well, but the swing weight has been beefed up by about 5 points on average. Babolat has also softened up the stiffness of this racket a little bit, as well as adding flax inserts, which is a dampening technology, in strategic locations on the frame. Okay, so let's get some specs here. You can see the specs that the racket should have listed at the top of the whiteboard there in red. The unstrung weight of this racket should be 305 grams, but with the handle wrap still on should be about 307.5, and we end up with 307.2. So once we take the wrapping off the handle, it should be very close to that 305 gram unstrung weight. Moving on to get the balance here, we should find a balance of 315 millimeters. And we end up with a balance of 317 millimeters, so just slightly more head heavy than we would expect. Lastly, for the swing weight, what we should find is an unstrung swing weight of about 295. That's a pretty significant change from the last version, so I'm interested to see how that plays out on court. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we get here. And we end up with a swing weight of 291. We'll just go ahead and double check that. Okay, 291 it is. So we'll write that down, we'll string it up, and then we'll come back to get the strung specs. All right, so here it is all strung up. Starting with the strung weight, we should have a strung weight of 323 grams. And you'll see here that is exactly what we get, 323 grams. All right, moving on next to get the balance. What we should find is a balance of 325 millimeters. But after taking the wrapping off the handle and stringing the racket, what we'll end up finding here is a balance of 329 millimeters. So we're about 4 millimeters off the balance point, which is not fantastic. That's not the end of the world though, so let's go ahead and check the swing weight. What we should end up with is a swing weight of 327. And you'll see here what we do end up with is a swing weight of 324. So not too bad overall with the specs. I'll just go ahead and write that down, and then we'll head out to the court for the play test. Okay, so on ground strokes, this thing was a beast. It's nice and stable and provides good mass behind the ball. You combine that with a pretty stiff and powerful beam, and depth was easy to find. Spin was also very good, which was nice because I needed it in order to keep my shots within the baseline. The feel of the racket was pretty good. Compared to the last version, you can tell it's a little bit softer and a little bit more muted. Overall, I'd say ground strokes were great as long as you can prepare early, move well to the ball, and fully commit to your swing. I often found myself moving back in the court a little to allow myself time to check these boxes, because anytime my feet weren't exactly where they needed to be, or there was any indecision in my swing, the result was not good. It worked out fine because the racket has plenty of power and spin from the back of the court to still be a weapon, but I typically try not to grind out points from back there. Volleys with this racket were good. My only knock would be that it lacks just a touch of maneuverability for me. Having said that, it's very stable and allows you to easily get good depth. I was pleasantly surprised by the pop I could get with anything above shoulder height. Something like a really high backhand volley that might typically be tough to get pace on was no problem with this racket. It really inspired confidence in those types of shots, and they were really fun to hit. On serves, I was really surprised by the pop I got with this racket. Similar to ground strokes, I struggled a bit to control it at first, but once I adjusted, I enjoyed the easy power that I could get from a simple spot serve. Slice serves were good as well, and kick serves were nice and heavy. Overall, the power and stability of this racket have the potential to make it a huge serving weapon in the hands of the right player. Moving on to returns. Returns with this racket were really solid. While with the last version, it was the maneuverability that stood out, with this version, it was the stability. The stability and power of the frame allowed me to easily block the ball back with good depth. Alright, so who's this racket for? This racket is basically for Carlos Alcaraz. But if you're not him, and you're an advanced level player who wants a little bit more power and spin than something like a blade would provide, you might also be happy with this racket. Playstyles it would suit best, in my opinion, would be baseliners who like to sit back and grind with heavy balls, or aggressive players looking to set up points with a big serve and a big forehand. Alright, so that's all for the review. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and don't forget to embrace the grind.